This video accompanies the PowerPoint called Sentence Structure Plus, located under the Course Resources button on Blackboard. In this video, we're going to review the 4 sentence structures and how to edit 3 common sentence problems: fragments, run-ons, and comma splices. First, we have to review some essential concepts. As writers, we use words to build phrases and clauses. Clauses are joined together to form sentences, and sentences form paragraphs, and paragraphs form essays. And that's why this is important. For this video, we're going to pause right here, or zoom in, I should say, on this section, and discuss the difference between a dependent and an independent clause, and how they're linked and joined to form correct sentences. An example of a word is chair. We would add more words to build a phrase on the chair. By adding a few more words, we build a dependent clause, a newspaper on the chair. And with a few more words, we get a full sentence, an independent clause. There was a newspaper on the chair. Independent clauses can stand alone. They are sentences on their own. Standing alone means that they can be followed by a terminating punctuation mark, and those are periods, question marks, or exclamation points. Dependent clauses cannot stand alone. In this video, you'll notice, in this PowerPoint, you'll notice that blue represents independent clauses and red represents dependent clauses. Simple sentences have one independent clause. Compound sentences have 2 independent clauses. Complex sentences are made up of 1 dependent and 1 independent clause. And compound complex sentences have 1 dependent and 2 independent clauses. These are the 4 sentence structures. Each one has rules associated with them, and we're going to review each one separately in the next slides. Simple sentences, again, they're 1 independent clause. They must have a subject, a verb, and a complete thought. Here are some examples. Ice melts. I ran 6 miles this morning. Do you know what time it is? Jane and Dan are going on a date this weekend. We visit Las Vegas at least once a year. I ordered steak, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Drop your weapon. Compound sentences are made up of 2 independent clauses, and there are 2 ways to join independent clauses, and only 2 ways. The first is a semicolon, and the second is a comma plus conjunction. Here are some examples. I like to put guacamole on top of my tacos. Tony prefers sour cream. Michael loves to play guitar. He practices every single day. You'll notice in these first 2 examples, their 2 sentences are closely related, and that's why they can be joined by a semicolon. Anytime that you have 2 sentences that build on top of one another, you can feel free to use this option. However, semicolons should be used sparingly, so it's totally fine to have a 5-paragraph essay and never use a semicolon, or if you are going to use it, you can use it once or twice, but you wouldn't, for example, have it 3 times in 1 paragraph. So you want to use them sparingly and make use of the 4 sentence structures to provide a nice variety in your essay. Here's how it looks with a comma plus conjunction. The game was over, but the crowd refused to leave. Sasha and Amir have been dating for 7 years, yet they do not have plans to get married. Complex sentences are made up of 1 dependent and 1 independent clause, and they're joined by a comma. The dependent clause can be at the beginning, middle, or end of the sentence, and here are some examples. On Tuesday, we will discuss strategies for creating a budget. Teresa, on the other hand, has a pleasant smile. Mark is a great student, I think. Notice that there are 2 commas hugging the dependent clause when it's placed in the middle of a sentence, and what remains is still an independent clause. What that means is this phrase, on the other hand, is being hugged by 2 commas, and that's letting us know that this is called a non-essential clause, and what that means is you can take this hugged phrase or clause and move it to the beginning or end of the sentence, or remove it, and the meaning of the sentence remains intact, and you still have an independent clause. Teresa has a pleasant smile. So even without or with this phrase, on the other hand, Teresa still has a pleasant smile. And the on the other hand is being used just to show a contrast. Dependent clauses that are separated by a comma are done so for emphasis or to express doubt. And if the clauses were reversed, we wouldn't need a comma and they would be simple sentences. So for example, in the first example up here, on Tuesday we will discuss strategies for creating a budget. Placing this clause on Tuesday at the beginning of the sentence and making it a dependent clause in this way puts emphasis on the fact that this will be happening on Tuesday. If you were to reverse it and put on Tuesday at the end, we wouldn't need a comma because it would just let us know we will discuss strategies for creating a budget on Tuesday. And that's just a simple sentence. Likewise, in the third example, placing I think at the end does change the meaning slightly. Mark is a great student, I think. Having it there sort of expresses some doubt versus placing it at the front, I think Mark is a great student, sounds a little more confident and secure, and again, that would change the sentence structure type into a simple sentence, and notice there are no commas when you have a simple sentence. Compound complex sentences are complex, like the name suggests. They're made up of two independent and one dependent clauses. Here are some examples. Even though I didn't feel like it, I went to the party, but I didn't bring a date. I prefer Starbucks, however, I will order coffee at Dunkin' Donuts when the location is more convenient. Every morning I make coffee and breakfast while packing lunches. It's a routine I could perform with my eyes closed. On Thanksgiving Day, Tom's family consumes enough food to feed a small nation, and they wonder why their pants feel tighter the next day. There are three common sentence problems that happen if the four sentence structures are not followed, and they are fragments, run-ons, and comma splices. Fragments occur when we leave a dependent clause alone. So remember we said dependent clauses cannot stand alone. They can't be followed by a period, question mark, or explanation point. If you try doing that, they're going to scream out for help. Because I was very tired after a long day, while I was on the couch watching TV, occasionally after eating a savory meal. Remember that dependent clauses do not have a complete thought, and this is what makes them different from independent clauses, and this is why they can't stand alone. They may contain a subject, a verb, both a subject and a verb, or neither a subject nor a verb, but what's really missing is the complete thought, and that's what separates it from a sentence. Most of the time, and I exaggerate here when I say 99.9% of the time, fragments in your papers usually belong next to or joined to the sentence that's before or after it. Sentences should express a complete thought, so it's easy to fix this type of mistake. You just have to complete the thought, and here are some ways to do that with our examples. There are several ways to fix these, to complete these thoughts. It all depends on what you're trying to say. So sometimes it requires omitting a word. Sometimes you can add words to the beginning or the end of the sentence. In this case, I left the fragment as it is and attached more information after the fragment. So because I was very tired after a long day turns into, because I was very tired after a long day, I decided to take a nap before dinner. While I was on the couch watching TV, my dog leapt up and joined me. Occasionally, after eating a savory meal, I enjoy a hot cup of coffee and a decadent dessert. Run-ons occur when there are too many clauses in one sentence. So if you think back to the different sentence structures, each one had either one type of clause or two types of clauses, and the most we had were three joined together. And again, each one of those sentence structure types has rules for how to join them. So a run-on happens when you just have too much information that's not punctuated or separated correctly. There are 5 ways at least to fix a run-on, and these corrections all link back to the sentence structure types. So if you need to review those boundaries and rules again, refer to slides 4 through 8 on this PowerPoint. Here's an example of a run-on. I really like Thai food. Rama chicken is my favorite entree. To find run-ons in your paper, I usually suggest to students that if you're in doubt, read the sentence aloud. If you find yourself struggling for breath, that usually means you're missing some punctuation marks, and it's most likely a run-on. So as I said, there are 5 ways to fix a run-on. The first is to separate the clauses with a period, and this makes it become 2 simple sentences. I really like Thai food, period. Rama chicken is my favorite entree, period. Or you can join the clauses together with a semicolon or comma and conjunction combo, and that is like the compound sentence that we talked about. With the semicolon, I really like Thai food, semicolon, Rama chicken is my favorite entree. Or with the comma conjunction, I really like Thai food, but Rama chicken is my favorite entree. A third way to fix a run-on is to make one clause dependent on the other, and that's, again, the complex sentence structure. Although I really like Thai food, Rama chicken is my favorite entree. A fourth way to fix a run-on is to use a subordinating conjunction, which makes a compound complex sentence. I really like Thai food, however, Rama chicken is my favorite entree. Or, when in doubt, you can simply rephrase the entire statement as one simple sentence. Rama chicken is my favorite Thai food entree. And the third and final error that we're going to review in this PowerPoint is called a comma splice. Splice means error, so a comma splice refers to the erroneous use of a comma, basically when you use a comma when it's not needed. And this happens when a writer attempts to join 2 independent clauses with only a comma. So as this little bubble there says, oh no. If you remember, compound sentences can be joined. Compound sentences are 2 independent clauses, and they can be joined only in 2 ways, either a semicolon or a comma plus conjunction. So you can never use just a comma, and I want you to make that very clear. If you have 2 complete thoughts, independent clauses or sentences, whatever you want to call them, they cannot be joined with just a comma. So I took the same samples from that compound slide and showed you what they would look like as a comma splice with just a comma in between. I like to put guacamole on top of my tacos. Tony prefers sour cream. It seems pretty obvious that those are 2 sentences, so we need to follow the rules for joining those types of clauses. And the same for the other 2 examples. And so I'm just reminding you again, it's the same information from the compound slide. You would have to connect them with either a semicolon, or if you want to keep the comma, add a conjunction. Some common conjunctions, there are coordinating conjunctions. I don't have a slide for that, but some of you may be familiar with the fanboys, F-A-N-B-O-Y-S. That stands for and nor, yet, or, but, so. Those are just some of the common conjunctions available that you can use for linking 2 independent clauses. Now, if all of this made sense to you, what I'd like you to do is go under Course Resources on Blackboard and locate the folder that says Grammar. And beneath this PowerPoint, there are 2 games that are associated with run-ons and fragments. You can try to play those games if you're a gamer. It's kind of a fun way to review these concepts and see if you can win the game. If you find yourself struggling, try reviewing the PowerPoint again. If you're still struggling, feel free to